now that I'm a bit older, I'm looking back and I'm thinking, I wish that people spoke sometimes in less definitive terms. I think that if there could have been a little bit more transparency about everybody's journey being so unique, because how could it not be? First of all, the industry is changing constantly in every way possible. The world is changing constantly in every way possible. The way that we're communicating with each other, the type of art that's being made, how you do anything is always changing. So I appreciate you acknowledging that like everybody has a very unique path to success, whatever that may be. And looking back, I feel like what led me here was also so incredibly unique and strange and bizarre, and not exactly how I would have predicted it.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
Today's chat was filled with lots of laughter and empowerment. Taylor has a light energy about her. I love her warmth, openness, and willingness to share. It was a real treat. I particularly admire her outlook on how we're all unique and how everyone's path differs. It was captivating. Anyway, I love this chat. I think you will too, so let's get into it. TaylorMisiak is an actor who you might recognize as playing Ally Wernick as the co-lead opposite Dave Burd, aka Lil Dicky, in Dave. She's also reoccurred on Season 2 of American Vandal, reoccurred in Season 1 of 10-Year-Old Tom, as well as reoccurred on I Feel Bad. Taylor can previously be seen in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and About a Boy. She also has her own TED Talk, How Not to Be the Worst, which is great, and you can check it out in the episode notes below. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, and we chat about a love of wings, great advice from her professor, big break, collaboration, waitressing, her TED Talk, and why the customer isn't always right, moving to LA, being honest to herself, everyone's unique path, and Dave. Before we get into this chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny and Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out every Monday at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, with the video to follow the following day. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's epic episode.
Oh, actually, this could be a fun place to start. I heard that you're obsessed with hot wings. Can you please tell me why and why you enjoy this?
Okay. So, correction, I am obsessed with wings,
Oh, wings.
not necessarily hot wings.
Okay.
I am working my way up to being a hot wing girl, but for now I am a wing girl who is hot, dare I say, but is not into the hot wings. Growing up, I was an incredibly picky eater, and one of the like three food items that I would eat was just chicken drumsticks with like a little bit of salt. And I mean, into college, I would just like buy a pack of chicken drumsticks and make them, and that would just be what I ate.
In the
And
life.
into adulthood, I've tried to like explore and be less of a picky eater. And when I started dating my now fiance, he was like, "Sounds like you would really like be a big like Buffalo Wild Wings or like hot wings girl, like if this is what you're into." And he loves them. And I was like, no, 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 that's a whole different thing. Like I like chicken drumsticks and I don't like wings. And I think it's because I always thought they were hot and I don't like spicy things, or at least didn't at the time. And man, was I wrong. Once I started eating some real wings, the little flats, little drummies, I was like, this is the best food ever. Best bang for your buck. I love eating with my hands. That's a huge part of it. Love eating with my hands.
Same.
Love sauces. I love things like now that I'm less of a picky. I love a sauce. I love a garlic parm. I love like an Asian zing. I love like barbecue. But Yeah, it's just become like a pretty big part of my person. Also, so easy to make at home. You got an air fryer, throw those bad boys in, delicious. I just think it's just a really, really great food item, and I stand by it.
I feel like it would be a great party trick because you could kind of like make it at anyone's like party, like, hey, I've got the best sauce for this. Also, I just want to clarify one thing. You said not hot, so would you eat cold wings?
I have. I have. I don't want to admit it, but I certainly have eaten cold wings. I've like had wings and then like kept them, the leftovers, and then like come home a little toasty and just eaten them cold. Not as good. Not as good.
But are
Cold
they
pizza is
enjoyable?
better. They're enjoyable. Yes. Yeah. You're me, they're enjoyable.
For the average person, maybe not, but for me, yes. So
Yeah.
it feels like it's opened up your taste buds because it sounded like you're like me. I only ate like bread on like fish paste when I was younger. That's like the only, which is
Hmm.
disgusting. And then when you try something you like and then it opens up your taste buds, is that, am I hearing that right?
Yes. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like the chicken wings was really not the best example of how I sort of like opened my palate.
Yeah.
But I just started to be I liked being around people and they were eating food that they liked, and I didn't like being the girl who said no. So I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna switch my policy to I'll try anything once, and really surprised myself at how many things that I liked. And then when you start gathering more data about your own taste, you can like start to explore more. And there still are things that I just don't care for and I will not eat. And there's always going to be people who push back on it. But yeah, I'm pretty proud of being a reformed picky eater. I encourage anyone out there to try and get with the program.
What do you think was the catalyst? Because for me, it was a genuine issue when I was like 6 and 8 and 10. And then I've opened it up and there's still some foods like you that I don't like. But was there like a moment or was it through the wings?
It was no, it was when I graduated high school and then I went to college, and that's when everybody started eating in like dining halls.
Yeah.
And it's not like dining halls had this like wide array of gourmet, diverse foods, but they certainly did have more than just chicken drumsticks and like
I'm so
buttered
sorry.
noodles.
Yeah.
So I started to see just like classmates and friends when we would all eat together, just trying different things. And I was like, well, I don't want to be weird, so I'll try a couple of things, and just enjoyed the act of like eating with people and like eating more things. So then that started to break me out of my shell, I think. And then what really pushed me over the edge was moving to Los Angeles. So I like dabbled in this new I'll try things attitude, and then I moved to LA, which has spectacular food, and just really had to be more open, and thank God I was, because it's yeah, just a really really great food city.
I have two points on that. One, all the people I've spoken to from LA, it's like they take it so personally, which I love. Like food is part of their personality.
Hmm.
And then also, which I've lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, I assume that's why you moved to LA, not for the acting career. It was just purely for the food.
Yeah, just for the tacos and the fish and stuff like that. No, it was primarily the acting, but then the tasty food came later. The Korean barbecue came later.
Very nice. So just as a bit of a timeline, you studied in, was it at Ithaca in New York, and then you moved to
Yeah,
LA. Why
yeah.
did you transition? Because that's quite a big move.
It is. And I, to be honest with you, thought my whole life that I would live in New York City. And it's
Oh,
just because that's what I had pictures where actors live. And I was a big Broadway baby. And it just was sort of what I was just drinking the Kool-Aid and loved it from everything I saw on TV. It's when you grow up in California, you love any footage you could see of New York City. And I was like, this is it. And then when I went to college in upstate New York, a couple hours north of the city, my first few years there, I really also thought I would move there, but then got kind of a more realistic idea of what pursuing acting would look like in that city. And while I grew up doing musical theater and I'm a mover and a shaker and I can carry a tune, I am not a professional musical theater actor. I would never cast me in a musical over anybody I went to school with. They are Olympians, they're gods and goddesses, they are so multi-talented. And I was just like primarily really focused on acting, and found like through a really helpful conversation I had with one of my professors that perhaps focusing on film and TV would just statistically speaking, be a better shot for me. And at the time, I also started to watch TV in a different lens. I used to watch it just like and enjoyed it and didn't really picture myself in it. And then once I was in acting school, I was watching TV going, oh, this is a role I could be. This is something I could have auditioned for. And film and TV is like primarily in Los Angeles. So my junior year, I decided to move to LA, and I did like 3 days after I graduated.
Oh,
Just
wow.
got in a car and left.
I, I have many questions. I want to go back to this professor's advice because I was thinking about this before. You know,
Mhm.
you wanted to do musical theaters and be in that space, and that's probably something you were thinking about for a while. What was that moment like? And it sounds like he did it with love and like grace, where he's kind of like, I don't think this is necessarily for you. Was that hard, or was it still like, you know, you can still do the acting?
Yeah, I think there was a slower process of realizing that I wasn't going to be doing the musical theater I had pictured myself doing growing up. And it, because it really did start with once was auditioning for musical theater programs, I started to be like, this is a different caliber than what I'm used to. This is a different pool of people than the people I was auditioning against in high school or middle school or in my community theater. So that process was like a slow burn, fortunately. So I didn't have to have a big heartbreak moment. Um, but the but my professor explaining to me, and shout out to her, her name is Paula Marie Cole, and she's fabulous. Um, Explaining to me that it was like something that she was like confident I could do was a really eye-opening thing because I had pictured, for some reason, film and television being less attainable than Broadway,
Oh,
which
really?
is not true. They're all impossible.
Yeah.
They're all not attainable. And so I was like, why do I think I could do this one? And it's just a matter of some notions I was just holding on to from childhood. But it was more of a positive conversation than a letdown because it was sort of a, all right, okay, yeah, if I can, I should start thinking about this seriously. This is within reach. I should shift my focus. Um, yeah,
It's pretty cool because at one level, like a dream potentially is being destroyed, but then another dream's being fostered because you're still getting this advice like you can actually do this, which is, I would imagine, just such an amazing moment when you see someone that you really like respect. That would be, yeah, that would be
totally.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Totally. And it was nice. I trusted, by this point, we'd been working together for a while, and she really knew me as an actor. And so to have someone who knows you as an actor start to give you that, instill that confidence in me meant a lot. It wasn't just a family member or a friend at a coffee shop who hadn't seen me perform. Like to have somebody who knows you in that way give you that advice was really profound.
It's not like when like your grandparents, like you're very talented, like, yeah, I'm very talented.
Yeah. Yeah,
And in
precisely.
terms from the family side, I know your parents weren't in the industry. So that moment where you're like, this is what I want to do, what was their feelings like when you decided to study this and then moved to LA?
I think my parents had, I am very, very lucky and very privileged. And part of that is that I think my parents had a nice balance of faith and skepticism that was helpful, in the sense that I know they would have rather me at the time pursued a career in an industry with more job security. And I know that comes from a place of wanting me to be safe. And it comes from a place of having faith in me that I'm a smart, capable person who could do many things.
That's nice.
Um, but I started to slowly realize that this is really my main passion and I would regret not pursuing it. And fortunately, I started to drop that into conversations as college application deadlines were coming up, and it wasn't as this big reveal. It was like, hey guys, this is kind of what I really want to be doing.
Amazing.
Um, I'm also one of the first people in my family to go to college. So my parents were very excited for me to go to school. And it was just important to them that I went to a good college and a well rounded college. So I focused on liberal arts schools rather than conservatories. So that was like a good compromise. Um, and I had a really great moment with my dad my senior year of high school, where it sounds so cheesy looking back, but I was Miss Hannigan in our production of Annie. And I had a
Yeah.
really good time in that role. And I thought it was just really, really fun. And I think my dad watched that production through a new lens, knowing that I was going to be hoping to pursue it professionally. And after he saw that production, he had a very nice, encouraging chat with me that was like, look, if you give it this much effort and dedication and work and you have this much fun doing it, then I'll support you to like go to school and do this and pursue it. Um, yeah, and so that was great that they always were thinking critically about it, but supported me in doing it within reason. And then when I said I wanted to move to LA, they were like, "Are you sure? It's so expensive. It's a little crazy. Maybe you should come home for a little bit. You should do this." But ultimately, they also were very happy that I just was doing what I wanted to do, and I was happy and safe and healthy. And but yeah, so I'm lucky that I had their support. It wasn't ever like completely
Don't do this.
blind faith.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but it was also not limiting at all. So I'm very
That
lucky.
is beautiful and very rare. And I like how you quickly summarize how they're looking out for you, and that's, their number one concern is you all through love. Can you also
Mhm.
imagine like at that when you were playing at Annie and your dad's like heckling you, trying to like throw you off your games?
Yeah, he's
Uh,
like, please, God, just fall off the stage. I have
yeah.
to prove to you that this is not it.
Uh, that's amazing. And when you moved from New York to LA, like 3 days later, that's pretty quick. Did you have like a support system there, or were you all alone? Like, how did you make that work?
No, fortunately, I moved with my college roommate and best friend who was also coming out to the city. So I moved with her. I had a roommate built in. There was a couple of other students from my school who also moved out, and there is a really great community of alumni from Ithaca as well who were here, and some of which were my friends who had graduated before me. Um, at the time, my college boyfriend was also living out here, so I had a lot of friends built in, which was great. I will say, I just a funny sort of weird story about it. I was so determined to move to LA and very, very focused on it and very positive, almost toxically so, where when I completed my road trip and I got out here, I'll never forget, it was the 3rd of July. And I was so excited to be here. And I was like, this is fine. Now I move in LA and now I'm an adult and now this is fine. This is totally fine. And we went to a 4th of July barbecue. My roommate and I had a great time. And while we were there, my legs started to break out in bruises,
Whoa.
just like bruises all over my legs. And I've never had an allergic reaction before. I assumed that's what it was. Very bizarre. And I couldn't figure out what was happening. And I went to urgent care and was ultimately diagnosed with it being a psychosomatic symptom of stress.
Oh, wow.
So it was my body sort of being like, my body was sort of freaking out. My body was like, you moved across the country and you have no idea what's next and you're broke and you want to be an actor? That's crazy. And then, but my whole outward monologue was very positive and relaxed. And so there was this just sort of a bizarre human body gut leg reaction to the whole move that was a good reminder for me to be like, okay, you should be taking care of yourself and being realistic, and it's okay to be nervous and it's okay to be anxious. You don't need to let your body freak out like that.
I appreciate you bringing that example. This is something I've studied, is kind of like the mind and the body and how our emotions impact our body. I feel like, and luckily everything was okay. I feel like that would have led to like higher self-awareness and a bit of a journey of just being more accountable towards yourself. Did it like
Absolutely.
did it force you to make any changes, or just, breathe, be in the moment? Anything spring to mind?
It did just remind me of, in having this conversation with the doctor at the time, and having a doctor look at me and go, that sounds pretty stressful. And my gut instinct was to go, no. And I was like, huh, I can't look this doctor in the eye while I'm covered in these black and blue bruises and go, no, not at all. That's not what it is.
I'm fine. I'm
And
fine.
I'm fine, I'm fine. And I think that that was a good lesson for me, and sort of like, I'm not benefiting from denying my own stress from myself. Like if I wanted to calm down my roommate, if I wanted to comfort a family member, if I wanted to pick and choose who I'm being vulnerable with, that's totally fine. But like, I do need to be honest with myself. So the way I speak to myself can't be, no, it's fine. No, it's like, that can't be how Taylor talks to Taylor. So that is a good lesson that I have taken from that moment and tried to bring into other stressful situations where I'm just like, look, girl, this is stressful. And you don't need to break out into bruises. You can just be real with yourself.
That is a huge lesson. Like that, to me, that's
Yeah.
kind of like life changing. And it didn't manifest into something like too serious. I feel like that actually would keep you accountable. Like when you're being rejected or someone, yeses turns to no's, or you think you're getting a job, obviously you're going to feel it and be upset and go through the emotions. But then coming back
Hmm.
to that is literally make or break in this industry of being able to, navigate and manage that. Is that, is, yeah, have you been applying that through those experiences as well? Anything spring to mind?
Yeah, I think, as an actor, you deal with so much rejection. I think even the most successful working actors have to be rejected constantly. Um, and this is still a part of my career that I am finding healthy habits in, to be honest, because rejection is coming in all different forms and at different times, and I'll be in different times in my life when I hear it. So I'm still finding what those good habits are for me. And I think part of that is exactly this, which is just like speaking to myself honestly.
So
And
important.
it's really what it comes down to. And there's sometimes I'll find out I didn't get a job and I'll go, you know what? That's fine. And I don't need to like unpack it anymore. I just like maybe I expected it, or I wouldn't have cast me in that role, or something else is distracting me. It's like I don't need to. Great, that's fine. Other times it like really stinks, and I really need to like go through this sort of mourning process for it. And I don't need to pretend like it's one of those moments where it's fine, where it's quote unquote fine. I need to take it on a case by case basis and let my initial reaction sort of be what it is, and then sit in that for a minute and then just be kind to myself afterwards. So yeah, I think it does that same tool is definitely useful in the audition and rejection process.
Definitely. And it sounds like it helps you just for life as well. Yeah, I think it's so important because we're kind of like taught at some level to kind of like sweep our emotions under the rug. And now that
Mm-hmm.
you can call it an opportunity or whatever you want to call it, that when we really want something that you're able to release it and go through it. You mentioned
Mm-hmm.
the mourning process. Is there anything, if you want to share anything that like springs to mind of what you do? Are there any, like you said, you're working on healthy habits? Is there anything that, spring to mind that is working for you?
I think I I'll have moments where I'll allow myself to be sad in trusted company, and it's kind of
Nice.
fun to hear whether it's my fiance or my best friend or someone I'm working with at the time. I like hearing the like, well, screw them. They should have cast you. Like they're idiots. Like I that stuff isn't old to me. I think like
Love it.
it's sweet, it's playful, and it's just nice to tap into those friendships and into that support. I don't like to do that um all day, every day with everyone I know. I think like I get what I need out of letting one person know. I've gotten really close with my manager, and he's often the person to tell me this news. And then I feel comfortable venting to him and getting to mourn with him a little bit. And just creating the space to do that within those few people has been very helpful for me.
That is so important. Have been only doing this in the last little while, but sometimes when we try and reveal, forgot what the word is, but we do it to too many people, it can create a bit
Mm-hmm.
of there's like too many chefs in the kitchen, but then also you're not
Mm-hmm.
really doing honor and justice to yourself. So has that been something that you've thought about where you just want to do it with like specific close people that you trust?
Yeah, I think it also comes from I have a like a little bit what we spoke of earlier of either being in denial about something being stressful or whatever. I really don't like to complain. I don't like belly aching. I don't like complaining about stuff. Um, and so while that's certainly not what it is by definition, if I'm feeling rejected, I'm feeling down, I do think it is closer to mourning something than it is complaining about something.
Agree.
So
Yeah.
I have to make that differentiation to myself and then go, I'm allowed to like mourn this lost job with this person. And I think the part of me that fears being one who complains or even seen as one who complains is what stops me from screaming it from the rooftops and texting all my friends about it. And I don't want to be known as the person who is complaining about not getting this job or failing in this audition. So I think a lot of it comes from that, which is maybe not the best like source of it, but it has resulted
It's
in
resulted in
me
something
finding
very
a
healthy.
good, yeah,
Yeah.
it's resulted in something good.
Does that also come into, because it's kind of like a lot of people spoken to on this podcast, I'm not saying you do this whatsoever, where it's all about you have to be good to work with and be professional, which is great. That's a very important lesson. But people have been brought up on the podcast. They're so worried, like if I'm not good to work with, or if I complain, I'm never going to get hired again. And
Yeah.
it's true to a degree. You obviously don't want
Oh,
to. Yeah, go on. It sounds like you've got
no,
it.
no, I'm just saying, I think it's, yeah, I am not surprised at all that that's a recurring theme in your discussions with people, because that is a huge part of being a team member on set. And there is a very thin line between it becoming being professional and being good to work with, and then sliding into not standing up for yourself when something wrong has happened, or if you do need to voice a concern, or if you do just need to be human and be upset about something. And unfortunately, there's the other end of the spectrum too, where then people who are upset about stuff are just like called divas, or called difficult to work with. But I do find it is, you want to be easy to work with, but part of being easy to work with is being true to yourself and being open and honest. And on the show I work on now, Dave, I'm really, really fortunate to feel safe on that set to speak my mind. And I would hate to imagine a universe where I would be playing Ally on this show and not feel that way, because there's been a lot of topics that have come up and a lot of scenes that have come up where, because I feel safe, I'm allowed to say, can we change this, or this feels like it should be different. And I don't fear being disliked or being labeled a diva, but I can certainly see a new actor coming onto a show similar to that, or like not creating an environment where people are feeling that way. And then you do hold yourself back because you want to be liked. And I think this is true for all humans. I think it's particularly true for women. Um, so
And
yeah, that's a part of it.
I think it's so awesome because you do hear these challenging situations and they vary from like low to more extreme examples where one doesn't feel comfortable to be themselves, or then maybe they're doing scenes they're not comfortable with or do things. And that's like, that goes against the whole creative process. And even just putting
Totally.
one's hand up and just saying, look, it's not quite my vibe, but doing it with love or grace, whatever you want to call it, it is exactly what you said, is way more important than just doing it because of the fear. And it's been a journey for so many people on this podcast and also outside of acting. It's crucial in life
Yeah.
where most people like myself have got like the people pleasing aspect. Just putting a hand
Yes.
up and saying, you know what about this? And if it's done in a
Mhm.
loving way, you read the room, even if the room is horrible, still put your hand up and you do what's right for you. Ultimately, I think that's an endeavor that improves everything, not just oneself. It's actually, it's so important, but it's not something,
1,000%.
yeah. So I heard this example actually with Dave, and I was so proud of you. And especially because, it's a new thing that you're doing. You would, in a very respectful, nice way, like put your hand up and say, whether it's a character, and you'd be like, look, I'm not sure this is quite where the character would say something or go. And you built that relationship with the team. And a lot of people would be fearful to do that. And I thought it was really cool that you would do that and have that, trust within yourself to put your hand up and say, hey, I'm going to speak up.
Thank you.
I know I don't even have a question. I just want to know what was the thought process, because you would have done it early. The show's been a huge success. Just even getting it off the ground, and then you've been doing that throughout. So I just want to know, has that been like a thought or just in the moment?
I am, again, this is just another a great example of how incredibly fortunate and lucky I've been. That is the environment of like safe space. I think that's an overused word, but the show created a safe space that let me be open and honest and help create like a more authentic character. And so I give a lot of credit to our showrunner, Jeff Schaefer, and Dave Burd, and to our producer and writer, Vanessa McGee, also like really tapped into me very early on in the process. And I was encouraged to speak up. our show is really unique where it's called Dave and it's about a guy named Dave and it's about his real life and it's about his real person. And when so much of our material, let's say, is sourced from this one person and this one perspective, everyone knew that then it was really important to create specific perspectives around him that were unique and real. And in order to do that, they needed to tap into the talent that was cast in all of those roles and say, like, let's make this as specific and different and unique as possible so that we don't have this like sort of monotone show where, you know, and we all know what those shows are, where every character is just kind of the same version of the writer or the main character. So I'm so very fortunate that from day one, they were like, how are we going to make Ally a fully realized person? And Dave and the whole team trusted that I know more about being a woman in LA in her 20s than Dave Burd did. So even though all of these initial like plot points and like her story arc came from the writer's room, there was always like a checks and balances system of like, hey, Tay, would people like, would Ally really do this? Would you like, what does this phrasing look like to you? And often it was real. Like, I don't want to make it sound like I came in and changed everything head to toe, but it was, that's part of the secret sauce to the show, I think. And it's most exemplified with Gaeta, who is playing a version of himself and has brought so much of himself and his vulnerability in his life to the show. And they created an environment that let him feel safe enough to do that. So it's just this really great secret to success is just like kind of let everybody cook and to let everybody feel good. And it's going to feel realer and have more heart.
Yeah, you can definitely see that, and it's to me it's a lesson about life as well. And I want to talk about Dave in a bit, but just having that environment where people like believe in you, they back you. I would imagine that would also help with confidence, not only in your career because this is a big deal, it's a big show, and something you should be very proud of. But has it sprinkled into your confidence outside of the craft?
I think so. I think very much. I mean, getting to have amazing conversations like this with you, or like, how does that not boost your
Stop
confidence? And
it.
no, it does. It really does. Like, I've gotten to like do have just really great interviews with people because of doors that the show has opened, um, and it's just made me feel like more of the person who I've professionally of the person who I've wanted to be. And I too am really proud of the show. So that is a really interesting, like I would be proud if I was a working actor on the worst show on TV. And I am not. I'm on a really fantastic show in my opinion. So it definitely has helped me feel confidence in a more well-rounded way that's like that I've felt in my real life.
Isn't that amazing? Just
Yes, yeah, it's great. And it's great because the whole career doesn't necessarily give you a lot of confidence in general. So I'll take it where I can get it for sure.
that's something I want to talk about. The reason I bring up like LA, for example, is just the normal journey. And we've had crazy examples. We're the same age, but you hear so many examples of, people, pursuing this craft, for example, and they get their big breaks in their 40s or their 50s, or, even someone who's not necessarily an actor. We had someone, I think he was in his 50s, pursue stand-up, and now he's a big stand-up comedian. And people don't necessarily realize that it takes a bit of effort. Like, you were in LA for a while. Yes, you were doing stuff. We can talk about the stuff that you're doing, but it's been kind of like a journey. And also the studying that you did at high school, all of this stuff builds up. And so it is quite a remarkable journey that you don't necessarily see these things on paper. They'll just say like, oh, you got Dave. But there's this whole journey, and we've gone over a little bit of it. It's just like wild to me how like you might not necessarily get the reward in terms of the job, but you're still actively looking to improve and grow and doing things to help you and your career. Is it something that you think about? Is it what's kind of been the mindset there?
About growing from here or how I got here?
Both. I could reword it if you need.
No. I think, well, I like what you said in terms of, when I was a student, both in high school and college, I loved whenever a working artist would come in and do like a panel or a question and answering session. And I had this whole notebook of writing down every single thing that they said because I wanted to know like how they succeeded is how I will succeed. And now that I'm a bit older, I'm looking back and I'm thinking, I wish that people spoke sometimes in less definitive terms. I
Yeah.
think that if there could have been a little bit more transparency about everybody's journey being so unique, because how could it not be? First of all, the industry is changing constantly in every way possible. The world is changing constantly in every way possible. The way that we're communicating with each other, the type of art that's being made, how you do anything is always changing. So I appreciate you acknowledging that like everybody has a very unique path to success, whatever that may be. And looking back, I feel like what's led me here was also so incredibly unique and strange and bizarre, and not exactly how I would have predicted it. But then again, looking back, I made decisions that I thought would lead me to more work, and they did. So it's just something to keep in mind whenever people are telling sort of their success stories. And I like the way that you phrased it. And then in terms of going forward, I do reflect on how much of my career now I have to thank from a music video, a non-union music video that I auditioned for
Pillow
in
talk.
2015, Pillow Talking. And like
Yeah.
I think that's a very good reminder. It's a nice touchstone for me that you never know where the next job or professional relationship or just creative moment is going to come from. So I still really like auditioning for everything pretty much. Like if I don't really connect with the script, that's one thing, but I want to be in more music videos. I'm still doing sketches. I'm still doing just sort of random table reads and things with my friends, because you never know where the next work is going to get you. It's not always a constant upward trajectory. I'm not exclusively looking to be in the next Martin Scorsese film right now because I've been on a show. Like I'm down to do whatever, because you never know what is the next thing for you.
That's exactly it. The next thing for you. And that's
You.
kind of been the theme of this podcast is everyone's journey is unique. For example, although this didn't happen in the way that I wanted it to happen, and it's a very positive story, when you hear about getting like a show out, for example, there's normally like, I'm just making this up. This is what everyone said. Go and work as like the assistant or the coffee runner, build your way up. 10 years later, you can sell it. Maybe the director sees the script. And through this podcast, actually, I almost had a TV developmental deal. And luckily it fell through. But just opportunities like that, who would have thought that a podcast could
Hmm.
get you somewhere, or just a music video is mind blowing. Quite recently I had a guy, he's like the top voiceover actor. He also does on
Wow.
screen, and through one he's done literally I think over 200 roles, which is crazy. But one of the roles,
Wow.
I think it was Uncharted, the movie Uncharted, but he did the video games, and that blew his career up. And you wouldn't have thought like 10 years ago that video games would give you like such a successful career, or a music video would open up so many doors. And it sounds like you've just been kind of following your intuition, your gut, or your joy. And that's kind of been why you've been so successful. Is it something that you think about of how you kind of like make decisions?
Yeah, I think also I just really was trying to do I'm very happy that a more naive version of me thought that the things I liked doing most were the things I was best at. And I don't even know if that's true or not, but in a way it is. But I when I was first in LA and just, had several survival jobs and was just trying to audition for what I could, I really, really targeted comedy, and because that felt like what I could see myself doing. Whenever I saw comedy videos and whenever I saw comedy on TV, I was like, this is what I could do right now. And this is me coming out of a school where I was just like Abigail in the Crucible and like doing Meisner technique and like doing so much drama and like doing so much hardcore acting stuff. And I just moved to LA and was like, I should do comedy. That is what I'm best at. And in reality, it's just what I thought was the most fun. And then I do think I'm good at, but I think I really set myself up for following my joy, as you said, because just starting to audition for comedy stuff, which led me to a comedy music video, which introduced me to great comedy producers and writers and crew, sort of snowballed into getting to stay in the comedy space, which I love. And a lot of the jobs I've been able to do, I have are shows that I would watch and shows that I
That's
admire, and that
interesting.
I've been able to make things with people who have similar sensibilities as I do as an artist. And that has, I think, the real nugget of that, like the seed of how that started, is just sort of like 20-year-old Taylor being like, I could do comedy. So thank goodness I did.
Well, you proved yourself right. And it's also interesting you talk about that panel where you're writing down all the notes of this is what success is. And then, for example, a
Mhm.
music video. Actually, we can go two ways. I'll pigeonhole the success side. Isn't it like just crazy through a music video you meet? Actually, I want to hear you talk about it. But through this music video, it opened up a door where you get to audition for Dave, but it actually didn't work in your favor, which you can get into, which is kind of like
Mhm.
hilarious. So yeah, I said a lot. I wanted to kind of like the journey from getting this music clip and how it's helped you. Music clips or
Yeah.
music video.
I when I booked and then shot Pillow Talking, it was 2015 or 2016, and I believe 2016. And while we were on this shoot, it was a 4-day shoot. I met Dave Burd for the first time, and we were working together and having a great time. And he told me that he was eventually going to pitch a comedy television show that was like his Curb Your Enthusiasm, his like Drake meets
Oh,
Larry David.
so funny. Yeah.
And I thought that's so, so funny. I was such a big Lil Dicky fan. I think everything he does is so genius. I was like, gosh, that's so funny. When it comes time, do you think I can audition for it? And he was like, sure, you're a great actress. That's why I cast you in this. You can audition for it. And years and years and years passed by. In those years, I'm fortunate enough to like slowly start building some legitimate TV credits. So post Pillow Talking, I got my first couple co-stars. I get my first couple guest stars, very small roles, but like working up enough, just enough gratification to be okay, still pursuing it. Um, and just in a small world coincidence, the casting director who had cast me in my most recent guest star was also casting the pilot for Dave. So the casting director did know me from just auditions and from recently working with me, and was the person who like called me in for the pilot. And Dave was like, oh, of course you're here. I said you could audition years ago. And there was only one role that was for a like younger woman in the whole pilot, and it was to play Dave's girlfriend. And I auditioned and I had a really fun time. And Dave is, as the show depicts, a very particular person, and a very hardworking person and a very tenacious person. So, in a sort of, not a very unconventional move, Dave was in every single audition for the role of Ally and read with every actress who auditioned for Ally, which is not normal. Normally, a role like this would have callbacks and then chemistry reads, and maybe the top 10 to 5 actresses would read with him. And Dave read with like 280 actresses, I think, maybe
Wow.
300. And every actress who walked in was like, what? Who is this person? Um, and I feel like I had a great time. And then I got called in again and then again and again. And I had several callbacks, all with Dave, all the same scene over and
Uh,
over again. And I started to really lose my mind and go, why am I getting called back so much? But I'm not really getting a lot of direction. I finally broke like a golden rule of mine, and I texted him. I was like, hey, this is Taylor. I'm wondering if there's anything I can do to improve. And he was like, nope. And I was like, okay. And then I finally like I have a producer's test, and I'm getting like very nervous about the whole thing. It gets to 2 or 3 days before the pilot is supposed to start
uh,
shooting, and I got a FaceTime from Dave, and he goes, "Listen, you got the part." And I sobbed and I cried and I was so happy. And he
oh,
goes, "Sorry it took so long. I really didn't think it was you." And I was like, "Oh,
thank
ouch." And he
you.
was like, "No, no, you were clearly the best when you came in, but I wanted to. This is Los Angeles. It's the city of actors and actresses. Like, there's no way, statistically speaking, that the best actor for the role of Ally is this girl that I've worked with before. Like, how is it the same girl? It has to be a different girl. There had to be somebody who was better."
That's
So he
so
read
funny.
more and more and more people. Um, and he goes, but it was just you. And then later it was funny to hear it from the perspective of like the poor casting director, Wendy O'Brien, being like, oh my God, we wasted so much time. We all knew it was you and he made us keep doing it. And Dave doesn't love when I tell that story because it makes it sound like perhaps he's rooting against me, which he never is. He's like my biggest champion. But it did leave a weird taste in my mouth whenever since then anybody's been like, oh, well, you were friends with him, you worked with him before, you must have just not auditioned. And I'm like, oh, I auditioned. I auditioned so much. I auditioned more than you could possibly know. I will admit it was still absolutely an advantage to know him and to have chemistry with him and to have spoken with him before because he's such an oddball. He's such a singular sensation. I imagine it threw a lot of really, really talented actresses off to talk directly to him in their auditions. And I was like, this is what it's like to talk to Dave. So I'm in no way denying I had an advantage, but in the same breath, I'm like, I kind of had a disadvantage. He literally did not want to cast me.
It sounds like a disadvantage. I know this is all through love. We're not bad mouthing anyone, but is it interesting? I was just wondering, like on set, and just only reveal what you want to reveal. That you described him quite well. He's a loving guy. He's a champion, but he would be very particular about certain things, as you can see in the show, and people that are aware of him being able to kind of manage. I want to necessarily say maybe an ego. Like there's different egos in the industry. He was just be very particular, and going back to yourself and having confidence. When someone who's like the lead of the show and created it, and he said, this is the way we got to do it, a lot of people can kind of put their hands up and go, well, this is what he wants, and which I'm sure he did way more times than not. But when something didn't feel quite right, you were able to challenge in a loving way. I'm just wondering like where that kind of like confidence came from and, being able to constantly be able to, tackle it, which would be a strange collaboration at the start.
Yeah, I think one of Dave's strong suits is that he does surround himself with people who are really, really good at their jobs, and he does listen to them. Even when he's at his most specific in his vision.
That's a nice one.
The best example I have of this that kind of is extreme, and I've only seen it happen this one time, was in season 1. In our penultimate episode is Ally's toast. It's the wedding episode, and Dave and Ally get in a fight that ultimately leads to their demise. But in this fight, Dave is defending himself and his confidence in himself, and he is at the within the story playing this past version of Dave at where he is pre his fame, he's pre his like major success, right? So. And Ally is like, but you're also just a normal guy. You're not going to be the next Drake. You're not going to be the next huge rapper. You might just be a normal person. And they're having this fight. And we did a lot of writing on set with the writer, Vanessa McGee. And there was a moment where Ally had a line like, well, you're not going to be the next Kanye. You might not be the next Kanye. And Dave was like, well, we should cut that line. That makes no sense. And we were like, well, why does that make no sense? And he's like, because I am like in the world and in the like I am the next Kanye. And we were like, okay, right, and you should think that, but Ally doesn't think that. And he's like, but why would she say? It's not like a smart thing for her to say. We're like, yeah, it is not a fact though, so it is not a dumb thing for her to. So we got into this weird sort of. He was just so close to it, I think, and was really sort of bumping on the difference between writing this scene within like the world and like and wanting Ally to sound at like really wanting her perspective to be as perfect as possible. It wasn't coming from a place of like making her smaller. He really wanted to make her have a stronger debate, but he literally couldn't write it because he couldn't step out in that moment.
Yeah,
he was so in it, and how could he not? I mean, I could totally. It's his life. It's like a fight that he's had, and it is a past fight. Imagine getting to like write this.
Oh, so he's going back into that like trauma state.
Yeah,
like, no, this is
like,
how it has to be.
Exactly. And it's not even like, I don't mean to say that that's exactly the conversation he's had at a specific moment in his life, but it's certainly, it just was all so close and so personal. And we eventually had to be like, Dave, you gotta get out of the room for a second. I think you just have to like go take a walk. And he was like, all right. And did.
Oh, that's
and
pretty
like,
cool.
Took a minute to like go take a little walk, and then we wrote a couple of lines like without his perspective, and then like kept them in, and then it made the fight a lot more real. But it takes the whole team sort of recognizing that, and he's not maniac who would like fight against it. It's like he's gonna listen when people are like, "No, you gotta give us 1 second." And he'll be like, "Okay, yeah."
It is
And I
pretty.
think
Yeah, no, sorry.
no, just in terms of your question about like the confidence to do that comes from by that point it was like one of the last episodes we shot, and I had been made to feel like I said comfortable enough to like stand up. And it wasn't just me; it was like me and our showrunner and our producer, and so I didn't have to be the one that was like, "Dave, get out," which I don't know if I would.
Shoot, go.
Yeah.
It is though pretty cool from his end when you are so in it for the various reasons you said that he can, just, take a breath because in that moment when anyone's attached to anything, like it can be a genuine fight outside of the craft, to be able to just go and walk out is that's such good advice. I'm very happy that you bring that story up because it's something we can all do. Something I can definitely do whether I'm arguing with someone just to go, yep. Okay, cool. Just need to
Take a walk.
let it go. And so you mentioned, actually going back with that example of the lady, no, it was a lady or a guy, it doesn't matter, at the panel where they're like, this is what success is. After experiencing this and working with Dave and going through the whole, actor journey of when, you're getting a few jobs here and there, you're working as a waitress, which we'll talk about, and also a receptionist. Has it allowed you to dream bigger and change your view of success? Or have you always had like the same view of what it would be or is?
I personally have just always wanted to pay my bills acting. That was my measure of what success was to me professionally. That was just the dream. I was like, it doesn't matter if I'm in toothpaste commercials or selling cat food. It doesn't matter if I'm doing a regional theater or a tour, or if I'm in a show or doing movies or industrial videos. I wanted to be a soap opera actress so bad because I knew that would provide, if I did well, some sort of job security because I would be acting almost every day. And I would also get to act everything. If you're in a soap opera, you get to steal babies, you get to come back from the dead, you get to marry all kinds of people, you get to be
Your
angry, you get to
twin.
be happy.
Yep.
Yes, you get to do everything. So I really fixated on soap operas for a while because I wanted that job security. And I just really defined success to myself as, aside from being happy and fulfilled personally, it's as, gosh, that's all I need. If I cannot have a survival job that I hated, or even just a survival job, if I could just do acting and pay bills, that's all I need. And
Cool.
I now still really cling to that. I think like I have goals as an actor. Certainly there's types of films and types of projects I want to do, and there's certain people I really want to work with, but I feel very successful right now, and I want to just like maintain that feeling, and I don't want to make success another sort of what's the word, like finish line and act like I'm not there yet. It feels like that would defy my ability to be present and like happy.
That is awesome. What I'm hearing is the success is in the now. You're able to enjoy it. That's an awesome perspective because we can be clouded, and a show like Dave as well. A few seasons, great cast, a lot of people, a lot of eyeballs, and it can, and everyone will do this. There's no judgment whatsoever. The ego can go, I've done this. Now I'm going to do this. I want to have a movie. I'm going to do that. And that's very normal and natural. But the ego can cloud us and go on to the next thing and then to the next thing. And from what you just said, you're enjoying this moment, what you've been able to do and achieve. Very rare. How do you not project 15 years and you gave the soap opera example, I'm going to be doing this and then this and then this, and then I'm going to win 10 Oscars and all of that. I think that's, yeah. Is there,
You just,
yeah.
no, I think we talked about it already, of just, you don't know everything that has gotten me to this point where I'm very happy. It's been unpredictable and a different sort of route. So I just anticipate that the next part of my life will be the same. So why try and make it anything more specific than that?
I like
Trust
that.
the process.
No, I think that's so awesome. It keeps you grounded and focused on the now. Obviously, we'll project at times, but you're able to enjoy it in the moment, which is a lesson me and 99.99% of people need to, well, can apply if they choose to. And then I'm also thinking, because this is really interesting. A lot of, you moved to LA. I think you work as a waitress. You got a TED Talk. We'll talk about that in a sec, which is pretty cool. You're also a receptionist. What was the moment
Mhm.
that, because the work wouldn't have been as steady when you're first starting. What kept you going when you were, being, for example, a waitress?
I think I just never, it was always a constant. I was always here to pursue acting. That's just like always what the main objective was. So, and there were certainly times where I would get burnt out by being broke in a kind of a harsh city or working jobs that were demanding and not super fulfilling. But I just never, that's how I introduced myself to people. I was like, I'm Taylor, I'm an actress. And
Oh, nice.
that was just never not part of my super objective, as they say. Um, and like I said, I think I alluded to it earlier, I am really, really lucky in that the timeline in which I booked jobs was really, really well timed in that just when I was getting at my lowest point, I would book a TV gig and it would be as little as one word on one show in one scene. And that would be enough to hold me over for another like 8, 9 months or a year of
Well,
just auditioning and walking dogs and waitressing and babysitting. Because I'd be like, well, I just did it. Like I am an actor. I just did it. I said one word on one show. So I'm really lucky that the every time I was getting really to the most burnt out, I got the just enough what's the word I'm looking for? Validation to keep going.
isn't that cool? Just that like moment where, regardless if it's a line or you're an extra, or whatever, to just say, first of all, you're an actress regardless. Like that is who you are.
Yeah.
But just, that validation side. That's pretty cool. In terms of the waitressing side, so you've done this TED Talk. So there was obviously, which is hilarious that you got a TED Talk to talk on this topic. Can you speak a little bit about it and how it kind of came about?
Yes, I love that story. I was doing, do you remember a few years ago on Instagram, there was just like sort of an Ask Me Anything story application. And I was just bored one day and was like, let me know what your questions are. And there was all sorts of random stuff. And one of them was, if you could have a TED Talk, what would your topic be? And I responded and said, how to not be the worst customer at a restaurant. That's absolutely what my TED Talk would be about. And then I got a DM from Wabash College that has a TEDx program. And they were like, hey, saw your story. This is so random, but like, we are collecting speakers for our next TEDx event. Like, is this something that you seriously want to do? And I was like, do not threaten me with a good time. I
Uh,
absolutely will do it. I am a former high school speech competitor. I did original oratory. I'm happy to do it.
that makes
So
sense.
it was just so random and funny. And like 6 months later, I was in Wabash, Indiana, like on a stage giving a TED talk about how to not be the worst restaurant goer. And I made a lot of really good friends. The kids who were working the program and running the whole thing at that college are so talented and sweet and smart and funny. And like it was just like one of the more sort of keep using the word random, but random opportunities in my life. And I'm really glad that I did it.
Yeah, it goes like, you're pursuing acting. We gave the voiceover example, we've given the music example, and you can get your own TED talk. It is wild that who would have ever have thought, what a what do I need to know as someone going into a restaurant so I can be a better person? What is the number one thing or anything that spring to mind so I can, help your
I will
fellow colleagues?
say I the general thesis of the TEDx talk was that I do not believe that in the restaurant industry the customer is always right. Restaurant is you should operate as though you're going into you are a honored guest in someone's home is my general policy. Because I was in so many situations as a server and a host at several different restaurants where the restaurants that ran under the customer is always right mentality had a lot more issues and like a worse environment than the ones where the restaurants really protected their staff and protected their culture. And so when people were rude to us or were putting the restaurant in dangerous situations and inappropriate situations, they would be asked to not come back. And then you get rid of and weed out the people who are like, well, I'm never bringing my business back here again. And you're like, yeah, good. Bye. We don't want you here. It's too,
Shoo,
you're a
go.
bad
Yeah.
person. Shoo, go. So that was always, it all really came down to that of the things that the way that people would talk to me and my coworkers and acting like it was their house. And I was like, you don't know how things go here.
I would
Just
have.
be nice.
So I had, I don't know if you have this, but like 20 years ago, two of my cousins, one worked at McDonald's, the other one worked at Red Rooster. And they were literally writing notes of just the things that you would see. And especially in a fast food place like those, it's just mind
Yeah.
boggling. And it's all the customers, right? But one of my cousins, I won't say his name, but even though he can't get into trouble 20 years later, he'd be like, I'm not applying by that rule. You're wrong. I don't want to deal with this. And I don't even know if he was the manager at that stage, but
Good
they
for
would see
him.
people pull hair out and put in their burgers. And they'll be like, yeah, there's a hair in
Oh
my
my
burger. It's like,
God.
one, we saw you. And two, the lady at the back's got blonde hair and this is black hair and things like that. And like, are you accusing me of like, yeah, just the most ridiculous stories. Yeah.
Drama, drama, drama.
And it's a very interesting, like the customer's always right. Like protecting your staff is so important, especially because there'll be a lot of aggressive people and people that would say horrible things to you, which aren't even like true or like try and attack you as a person just because you're trying to get them to a
Yeah.
table.
Just because they're like hungry, I'm like, you're gonna be that rude to me? Like, come on. And it's, I mean, and a lot of my friends, like we all have worked in the service industry for so long. So it's just something I hear their stories too. And it's just like, oh man. And it's not just in the restaurant industry. It's like when I was writing the talk, I did another Instagram question asking for people in other industries to let me know when customers were being the worst. And it was just when people were taking things, the common thread was it was when people were taking things into their own hands and assuming that they knew best and that they knew they were experts at like something that's not their job.
I know.
Like, come on.
Do you have a particular pet peeve? Like maybe when someone says like what's good on the menu, or is there anything that like springs? Because I
No, I
personally,
love that.
oh,
I love talking to customers about what they want to eat and like their experience. Like I'm all about that.
that, yeah,
I I didn't like when people would like defy the rules of the restaurant just like cuz and I think the biggest pet peeve, which I also talked about in the talk, is people would ask requests or questions in a rhetorical way. And so it would imply that if I said no, I was being difficult and that the question itself wasn't really a request. So it's like, well, we could just pull up another chair, right? And like I'm just gonna order like something off the menu, okay? And like everything was sort of posed to me as if they were being like chill and fun, and then I was gonna be like the negative Nancy who came in and said no because the question wasn't an honest question. So that was my biggest pet peeve was just being asked rhetorical questions.
people can be very funny. What is your stance on this? And this could make or break our friendship. When there's a big order and the waiter, waitress, whoever, they don't take notes and it's a big order. What are your
I
thoughts?
don't love that. I
Okay.
don't love that. I think so. I've talked to many people about this. One of my good friends who I worked with for years, she has a memory like a steel trap and she can memorize everything.
Wow.
I think even if that's true, it is a distraction to the diners if
Yes,
you're
you've got
not
to get it
writing
wrong.
stuff down. Yeah, so then they spend the next 30, 40 minutes, however long, being like, there's no way she remembered that. And that's stressful. And they're going to a restaurant in order to have food stress free. So even if you're just like doodling on a piece of paper, I do think writing things down, especially when it's a
Doodling.
blah order, it's
Yeah.
just
Blah, blah,
a
blah, blah,
comfort
blah.
to people. Yeah. I think like if you could do it, all the power to you. But I've been on both sides of it, and I do feel like just at least pretend like you're writing it down.
Okay, we're now best friends. We're on the same page. That is my biggest pet peeve. And, you know, my mum's a vegan. My girlfriend can't eat garlic or onion. If I go with my grandpa, he's fussy. I can't. I don't like tomato. I know that's going to upset a lot of people. And then the whole
Write
time,
it
like,
down.
please no tomato. Please, I'm not religious. Please, dear God, please, can you make sure there's no tomato? Yes, it's made in one of my like Curb Your Enthusiasm scripts that I've been writing. Literally the one episode is all about the stress of if the waiter is going to write down the yeah.
Totally get it. Write it down. Just write it down.
Okay, we're on the same page.
Hmm.
Let's see, anything to wrap up before we do the rapid fire segment? I'm just quickly. Oh, actually, last things on Dave before we do the rapid fire segment. There's been a little bit of breaks, and I don't think there's another season happening. Am I correct, or is there
We are
potentially?
waiting to hear about another season.
Oh, okay. That's so. I would love to know about. I think there was a bit of break. You please correct me if I'm wrong. Between I know that when you guys did the pilot, there was a big break to season one, and then there's been
Hmm.
breaks throughout, and now you're obviously waiting. How do you deal with the waiting and the nerves and all of that stuff?
Um, yeah, I get a bit antsy. I love making our show. I wish that we made it faster. I try to fill the time with trying to audition for other things, trying to read other things. Um, it is quite a long process. So like, and the writers room will call us and tap into us when they need to. And then when we're in pre-production, we're doing fittings and we're kind of so there. Luckily, the lead up to actually shooting the show still involves like a couple of things that make you feel a little busy, but the gaps between when the show airs and yeah, when it starts up again, I just try to stay busy.
Is there anything? I don't know if you do this, but I read this a few years ago, so I'm a bit scared to bring it up. You used to do journaling. Is that something that you still do, no?
I should do journaling more. I used to be really religious about it, to be honest. And then honestly, I was my best at it when I was living alone, not to shade my fiance, but
You can
it
live in
was
another
easier to
house.
have a ritual like that when I was living by myself because I would journal at night and in the morning. And now I'm like talking until I fall asleep and talking until when I wake up. So that is something that I should be better at. However, I've been reading a lot more in the past few years, and I started a book club called Pros Before Bros.
Oh,
That
I
is
love that.
just an all-woman book club, and that's been really, really fun. And we, over the pandemic, we're meeting virtually, and now we meet in person on Sundays and just like have snacks and drinks, and we read a real gamut of stuff. And so I'm always reading something with them, and then I've been trying to read some stuff that I hopefully might option into like a show or a feature. I'm trying to like read some like female driven stories. So
Cool.
I've always got a couple of little books on tap. So I am reading more than I'm writing. Um, but that's like a good way to stay busy too.
So this is also one of my pet peeves. My girlfriend's mum, to a degree, I think, but mainly my mum, I always bag her for this. I don't think they've ever discussed books at their book clubs. I think they all drink wine and bag their husbands. So yours is the first book club that I've ever heard of actually discussing books.
We do. You know, what's funny? Especially when it's, because like I said, we meet on Sundays, and when that is during the football season, my fiance has friends over to watch football in another room, and I have friends over to do book club in one room.
That's cute.
And one of his friends walked in one day and was like, "Oh my God, you guys are actually talking about the book. That's crazy." And we do, and I think it's nice. Part of the secret to success of it is it's a really eclectic, wide group of people and friends. So there's some people who have now come into the book club that I've never met before and like never hung out with socially. And that is like this great unifier to then make it really focus on the book. I will say we get off topic constantly, but it's great. Then it just becomes this like big group of really smart, cool women talking about therapy and talking about their pets and talking about their careers and lives. And yeah, so it's a little bit of both.
Well, I think that's a nice balance. I'm still convinced to this day my mum hates it, so I bring it up all the time. And I hope she listens to this episode. She has not once discussed the books. What you're doing it great. So yeah. So I reckon what we're going to do to wrap up the podcast is we're going to do a rapid fire segment. So the first thing in fact, they're never even rapid fire. You take your time. There's no pressure. Actually, this is also one of those things where I read, but it wasn't like a trusted article. Have you done improv before?
Yeah.
Okay, good. What have you learned from improv?
Oh, I've learned the game. I've learned to yes and. I have learned that non-performers make some of the best performers.
Ooh.
Um, and just learn to not take myself so seriously.
I won't comment on your answers besides this one. I love improv. I've done a little bit of it over the years, but I've also seen it apply more to the non-actors and the non-comedians because it's actually helped, whether it's their mental health to just kind of get out there or yes and is a
Hmm.
life lesson. I think it's the greatest thing. Um, but I mean, what got you into it?
Uh, when I moved when I moved to Los Angeles, I focused on trying to book classes that I didn't take in my acting program at school. And
Cool.
so I immediately signed up for UCB 101 improv and a commercial workshop because I felt like I didn't really know improv comedy and I hadn't studied commercials. So I was trying to just like round out my education. And I did a couple of levels at UCB. And then one of my teachers taught a private group that I did for several months that I
Cool.
really liked. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it.
That is okay. Last time I'm going to comment, I think that's pretty cool to especially, diversify your skills and get out of your comfort zone or something you've ever done. Very cool. Lesson for all. What are you most proud of?
I am most proud of my friends. I have a fantastic group of friends in my life, both the ones who are here in the city and then just people all over, all my long distance friends. My family comments on it. Anybody who's worked with me comments on it. I really have spectacular friends who
Nice.
do fantastic things for me, and I'm really proud of that.
Very cool. We sort of asked this favorite thing to do when you're not working.
Favorite thing to do when I'm not working, going to Buffalo Wild Wings and then going to the movies. My Buffalo Wild Wings is right next to my movie theater, so it makes a really good double feature. And I also really love reading. I love hanging out with my dog. I love going to the beach, and I like dancing with my friends. These are all sounding very generic now that I'm rattling them off, but
No,
those
I
are my
think that
favorite things to do when
they're
I'm not working.
they're very cool. And me and my girlfriend, we don't eat wings, but we've got like a place that we like. And we
Mhm.
literally have been seeing a movie like once a week for the last 2 years. It's actually, I've seen every movie. I love it. So I resonate with you.
That's good.
Absolutely love. Maybe she loves it because she doesn't have to talk to me, but it's a win-win. So what is your biggest pet peeve or something that springs to mind?
Okay, this isn't my biggest pet peeve, but it's but it was something I was talking about recently. Okay, I don't like nail biting. I think nail biting is like frustrating. And when people like pick their nails, I can't I like
What
really
about
I've like stalked
toenails?
strangers. Ooh, toenails, and I can't even begin. I can't even begin with toenails. Can't discuss nails. I just think
Uh,
like I just hate like the little like um and this is a stupid pet peeve. It's really almost mean because everybody does it. I don't understand when people will say I was thinking in my head. I'm like, yeah, you were like
I've
you were
never actually
thinking.
heard
Like you
that
could just
before. So
yes, you have. You had listen for it now. People are gonna go, and then I was there, I was just thinking in my head, like, then we should do this. Like they just add in my head, and I'm like, you don't need to add that. Like,
now that I'm aware of it, I could see how that would be annoying.
yeah, I just like I now I catch it and I'm like, that's not.
You've ruined
Also,
my
when people say
life.
also too, people go also too. I'm like, don't say also too. Say two or also. Don't say also two.
Uh, you've ruined my life, but I appreciate it. Now I'm going to be super aware of
Yeah,
it.
sorry.
What is your favorite thing about yourself? Yes, that is the hardest
My
one, or second hardest one.
okay. I think my favorite thing about myself is my ability to adapt. I think I was the new girl a lot growing up. I moved around several times, and I was just like always the new kid, and that sucks. But I think I had a natural ability to adapt, and then I had an opportunity several times over opportunities to make that talent even bigger. But I'm proud of it now, and I like that about myself that I can change things up and be the new girl wherever.
I love it. I know so I wouldn't comment, but I think that and you can see how it would apply also for acting, New York, LA, all the things that you do in your situation. It's a very important skill. Any regrets?
No, I think there's things that I've learned from and things I will do better moving forward. And there's obviously things I'm like sorry for perhaps, and like those like things I've apologized for, but nothing that I would qualify as a regret.
We can add it to your next TED Talk. What would you do if you knew you cannot fail?
Skydive. I would write more for sure. I those two things have to be, hand in hand. I think I would write more, and I think that I would genuinely do some more adventurous things. I'm kind of a scaredy cat, so I think I would skydive, I would scuba dive, I would do a lot of things I'm really scared to do.
Is that something you would consider soon or in the short term?
No, only if I knew I couldn't fail. That's why it's the answer to the question.
We're going to put it out there to the universe. That's going to be, if there's any sponsors out there, free skydiving, send it Taylor's way. That'd
Yeah,
be
with a guarantee.
Garrett. I've done skydiving and it's not that bad.
That's not what I want to hear.
Well, I had a very unique experience, which I won't scare you about, but I'm safe and I'm okay. And it's now something that I can boast about at parties. That's the only reason you do skydiving.
Oh
Yeah, the adrenaline.
Yeah.
It's to say I've done skydiving, to bring it up when no one asks, like what's your name for a coffee order? I've done skydiving. Oh, and my name's Michael.
I've skydived.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I get that. That's what I'm saying. I would do it if it was guaranteed success. So I want to be that cool guy, but
There's still time. Any advice you want to give to people who want to try something different or new, but perhaps a bit fearful of doing so?
That I think, like, that you're not going to love everything, but you also know that you're not going to hate everything. So why not give things a go and just see where you land? Because if you're scared you're not going to like it, you're not going to 100% hate every single thing that you try. I don't know. It's a numbers game. That was my approach to becoming a reformed picky eater, and I think that could be an approach to hobbies and new activities and new pursuits. Give it a shot. Just give it a whirl. If you hate it, then now you know.
I love that. You're right. Last two questions. If you could go back into a time when you were first starting out, it doesn't have to be necessarily your career. What advice would you give yourself and why?
I would say, hey, Taylor, your mom, who is a genius and is so funny and looking out for you, gave you the very funny advice of faking it till you make it. And that is going to be the right thing to do sometime. But keep in mind that you don't want to fake it till you make it so much that you never ask for help or admit that something is your first time, because people have a capacity for kindness and an excitement to help you if you admit that it is your first time on set or your first time on a red carpet. So fake it till you make it to an extent is what I would tell younger Taylor.
I've never heard it like that, and that resonates so strongly for me. Because you're right, that capacity, people, like, even if they're in bad moods, they kind of just switch out of it and like, oh, okay, do this. I might do that on all podcasts now and just be like, this is my first time. But
this is my first time. Oh my gosh. My first red carpet, I was a ball of nerves. I had no idea what to do. And I know that sounds silly because it's such a simplistic thing when you think about it, but they have all of these really professional photographers who I now know, they're not like the regular photographers who are often on the red carpet. And they were just impatient with me because I couldn't figure it out. And finally I went, I'm so sorry. This is my first time. And I watched this wave of like warmth and compassion and excitement come over all of them. And one of them pulled me aside and went, get over here. Taught me how to pose, taught me the do's and don'ts, was so helpful. And I thought that I never would have gotten that whole interaction with her and been so enlightened if I had just pretended like I'd been there a million times. Like, sometimes you just have to go, hey, this is my first time.
That's so beautiful. And I love that lady for Kindness
I know.
leads to kindness. Last question before I ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you. What is the one question I should have asked you?
The one question that you should have asked me. Should have asked me. You know, failure is in the title of the podcast, and you haven't technically asked me about a specific failure or not.
Is there anything we've sprinkled it along the way in your lessons, but is there a particular moment that springs to mind?
I will tell a very embarrassing story that was certainly qualified as a failure because we've talked about not achieving, not being cast in things, and dealing with rejection, and there's certainly a difference between failure of like not achieving a certain, not getting a certain role that there's all these powers that be, and then like kind of disappointing yourself and just like failing within yourself. I was asked to in high school. I one year got some award from I was the Minnesota Scholar of Distinction in Theater Arts, and they had a Scholar of Distinction in all different areas of academia. And the following year, like as if it's Miss America or something, they asked me to come back and read and present the awards for all of the recipients that following year across all subjects. And I said, sure. And I was so excited. And I was like, I'm a little star. I'm going to go be a little e-news reporter. It's going to be amazing. I'm just going to like read off whatever. To be fair, wasn't given a lot to prep with, but I did no preparation. And you could just smash cut to me 2 hours into this ceremony, sweating my body weight out of my entire body. I was so nervous. I was such a mess. The entire ceremony was just reading people's names. And there was no pronunciation guide. There was no practice on how to, and who was like identified as what. And I'm saying that it was the most horrible public speaking experience of my life. I butchered so many names. I wasn't charismatic. I wasn't funny. I was a disaster. I was uncomfortable. I made everybody else uncomfortable. To this day, will never. I have empathy for John Travolta saying Idina Menzel's name wrong. I really do. I'm like, you become so dyslexic up there, and it's crazy. So that was such a low point where I felt so embarrassed, and like it was a mixture of not being prepared enough and not totally understanding the task at hand, and not doing as well as I could have done, and also not knowing what it was. I should have said no. So that was a moment when I was thinking about failures. I was like, that was a failure, and I have learned from it. I haven't been in a similar situation since, but that is a moment that I flopped and failed, and it's done.
I'm glad that you can laugh about it. It means you've done the work, you're healed. When I graduated from my commerce degree, or even with my girlfriend, she's a teacher, when they were reading everyone's name for graduation, I swear this guy, his job is just to pronounce people's names. I don't know how he did it, that we had like 30-letter surnames, and people didn't give a crap about the ceremony. They were just clapping this guy. He 100% had been preparing, and he would have had pronunciation, and I couldn't believe if that goes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Love that. Love this man. Good for him.
Well,
maybe that's one of my new goals now, is to like do a graduation ceremony and like knock it out of the park and make up for my terrible emceeing.
First of all, everyone would be in the same situation as you. I'm convinced he has a team of like 5 spies, and he like listens to people's phones, because he 100% was like reading something. So the takeaway from that story, it sounds like, because you were like laughing and smiling, that's been like a lesson that you've carried forward. Is it about being prepared?
Yeah, I think it's about preparing. It's about understanding. I don't wing anything anymore. I was like, I'll just get there and read off what they have for me. Like, no, like give it to me in advance. I'm not cold reading anything. I'm not like, even if the preparation is as little as that, you just don't wing it. But that was just 17, 18-year-old Taylor being a dingus. So
I resonate. Anything else that springs to mind, or anything else you want to? Yes, go on.
Here's the last thing. Here's
Yes.
just the last thing I'll say that's just sort of like been circling all the conversations that we've had. something as an actor I've found very comforting when earlier we were talking about how I'm dealing with different rejection from different jobs. Something that has been really comforting is I am engaged to and live with a writer director who is constantly working on stuff and is often casting things. And I now have had this lens where I'll watch some callback tapes. I don't see everything that is sent to him, but I see some highlights and I see the pool of people that he's looking at and the way that they end up casting shows and seeing the other side. Everyone is so talented. Everyone is so talented, and they're just trying to find the best puzzle pieces for the story that they want to tell. And that has been so comforting and such a transformative thought from a younger version of me that first moved to the city and first started pursuing this. I even said it earlier in this podcast. It was like a numbers game, and I was so competitive, and there were so many actresses. How do I stand out? How do I beat all these actresses? And now I'm like, oh my gosh, everyone is so good. It's not a numbers game at all. You just have to be the right person. And like, that is not, again, like that, it just means somebody else was more right for it. It doesn't mean that they were better. And this is probably something that everybody knows and has been thinking about for a long time, but it's a pretty recent realization for me that is really comforting and really positive. It's like very beautiful. Like now when I see these tapes and he casts somebody, I look at how well this person did. I look at how great their tape is, and I go, oh, this is so exciting for them that they're going to get the call that they deserve it, and they do. And that's going to be me for different projects. Like we all have our turns based on what it is. But it's just been very comforting to go, you know what? Like everybody here is so good. It's just a matter of who is right. It's not a competition against everyone.
I love that. Thank you for bringing that up. It's such a nice story that I also, you can apply outside of life, that there is a right fit. Like whether it's a inverted commas boyfriend or girlfriend, you're not meant to marry every single dude on the planet. There's a right fit. You found it, for example, and it's just kind of like crazy. This person can be so talented, and you're like, you know what, you are great. This is not a go at you. This is not necessary. So I'm sure, obviously, like we spoke about this before, but in that moment of when you get rejected, at the end of the day, you come back to go, it wasn't necessarily me. Maybe you could have been more prepared or whatever, but you did the best you could, and you know what? It just wasn't right for the role. It's a nice little lesson, not even a little, but it's a nice lesson for life.
It's a nice
Thank
lesson.
you for bringing that up. Before we go, how can people follow you and keep up to date with you?
Gosh, you can follow me on Instagram, and my handle is my name, TaylorMisiak, TaylorMisiak. And yeah, that's my main form of social media, and I try to post about projects and things on there. So yeah, thanks for asking.
We'll upload that in the episode notes so people can check it out. Can people like rally for a new season of Dave, or is that out of everyone's hands?
Well, right now, it's a little out of everyone's hands right now due to the writers and actors strike. So I can't really ask anybody to promote the show or try to promote for it. But I hope that
can, right?
But you can,
Yeah.
you can. And I hope that when the strikes come to hopefully a successful close, that we'll be back in business and we'll hopefully hear good news. But yeah, I appreciate everybody who has watched thus far and has supported it and me.
So I was also just thinking, you can't say anything, but maybe you can nod. I don't want you to get into trouble. If you guys are sleeping, just keep Dave just running on loop. So that way, it gets more numbers. That's yep. Okay. Well, yeah, you heard it from me, everyone. That's my advice. Awesome. You are amazing. You're uplifting. You're empowering. This has been so much fun. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, really excited. And hopefully we'll do this again sometime in the future.
Thank you so much. You're such a wonderful interviewer, and like you're so prepared and so thoughtful, and I really appreciate it. I had a really good time.